I'm joined today with by one of my colleagues, Rich. He is a registered dietitian. Um, Rich, you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Hello, I'm Rich Williams. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I have over 15 years of experience in a variety of different settings, clinical, outpatient, diabetes, weight management, and just got my master's in business administration. I have a passion for nutrition and excited to be working with Matt here.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. So today we're going to be going a little bit into a topic that has continued to come up with clients of mine, and where I'm a personal trainer and not necessarily qualified, or it's kind of outside of my scope of practice to really get into the deep nutritional aspects of things. One of the things I wanted to talk about was intermittent fasting. This is something that continues to come up, and it's something I've done before and I've had good experience with, but it's something that with the textbook stuff that I've read, with getting my certification, it doesn't seem to make sense in theory. And one of the reasons that is this idea of protein synthesis. You know, if we're looking to not only lose fat but add lean muscle on top of that, the idea of protein synthesis does not seem to fit the method of intermittent fasting. Is that something that you would agree with in your experience?
So intermittent fasting is still very new. It's something that honestly I'm still trying to get up to speed on. I know it's gaining a lot of popularity. With intermittent fasting, so in the past, I think there was like one diet for everybody. And where it works for one person, it may not work for everybody. And some people get really frustrated and they look to other alternatives. So I think intermittent fasting is a way to help somebody that really it would work well with. It would help them with their goals. And with intermittent fasting, there's different ways to do it. Some people do 8 hours of feeding, 12 hours of fasting. I've even heard of 2 days of feeding, or even, 5 days of feeding, 2 days of fasting, whatever that might look like. So you're going to hear a lot of different approaches to it, depending on who you're following or you're reading up on. So regarding protein synthesis, the one thing about digestion is your body is suited to digest protein. So when you eat protein and then it comes into your digestive system, primarily in your stomach and your gut, is where it's absorbed. So the body can absorb a lot of protein even at one time. It's not, when you eat a lot of protein at one meal, it's not necessarily going to be absorbed all at one time. And the body will absorb it as, I don't know if a rate limiting step would be the right word here, but think of it as a gas tank full of gas. You're going to use up the gas as you need it, right? So my understanding is the body can still absorb all the protein you eat, but regarding what it's used for, that's going to be the difference. So if
Right.
let's say you just worked out and you ate a ton of protein, then it's going to shunt that towards protein or muscle protein synthesis, because after working out, you're creating tiny microscopic tears, which Matt, I'm sure can tell your viewers about that. So it's going to shun it towards that. But if you're not working out or you just didn't work out, it could shun it towards daily maintenance. It could promote fat storage if you have too much at one time. So the body needs a certain amount of protein per day at one time to maintain itself.
Right.
So protein, one thing I like to tell people, because they don't understand what protein does, we know muscles is basically protein, but also your immune system, just for an example, is made out of protein. So protein is used in a variety of different factors and processes. So regarding what your daily intake should be, the body is very good at conserving amino acids, which is the building blocks of protein. So you don't necessarily have to eat a ton of protein a day, but if you feel comfortable, let's say eating 150 grams or 200 grams of protein a day, the body is going to use that. So the body is going to use what you eat for what it needs at that time. And if you eat too much protein at a certain time, it'll still be absorbed, but it could be shunted towards fat storage rather
Right.
than fat loss. Um,
So my understanding of it is from when I learned getting my certification is typically whenever we're looking at adding lean muscle to a client, we're looking at anywhere from zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 grams of protein per pound of weight. And the typical client I have, it's a 200-pound client. We're going to be looking at around 160, from 150 to 160 grams of protein intake a day. And if that client is doing intermittent fasting, let's say, the one that I commonly see the most is the 4-hour feeding window. And if
okay.
they're in 4 hours ingesting 160 grams of protein, in my mind, the body is going to start using that as fat storage rather than use that completely to protein synthesis. Because as far as I understand from the studies I've looked into, the limit is somewhere around 36 grams of protein per meal that your body is using for muscle building and protein synthesis. And so to get 160 grams of protein at 36 grams per meal, you're looking at 4.5 meals through your day just in order to get your intake, which is also sort of inconvenient for a lot of my clientele. We're looking at 2 to 3 meals a day. So what does that look like in your experience with, my client needs 160 grams of protein. They need to get it whether they want to get it in one meal or whether it's 3 meals max. What does that look like for protein synthesis and the uptake in that, both before and after a workout?
So I think what I find is people get caught up on numbers. I think you would agree that, just being consistent with your workouts is really going to transform you no matter what. You could have a really poor diet. Not that we encourage that, obviously, but you can have certain spells where you're not eating as well as you should. And, at least you're going to maintain your muscle. So for muscle growth, you do need more protein. That is true. There's a lot of controversy over how much. Bodybuilders will usually say 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. So some people can do excess of 200. The recommended dietary intake that's set by the USDA is actually 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So when you look at that, that's what we use as 100 grams a day. I think that would be a good starting point. If you feel comfortable doing more, if you're eating in a 4-hour window, I would agree with you. Anywhere between 20 and 40 grams per meal is probably good enough. You don't have to go overboard. If you happen to eat 50 grams, don't worry about it. You're probably not going to gain a lot of fat with that. But if you eat, let's say, 100 grams at a meal, that's a bit much. Regarding a clinical standpoint, I just want to make this point, is if you have any indication towards kidney disease, you really got to be careful about how much protein you have at one point as well. So if you have a 4-hour window and you're trying to get 160 grams, then I would really highly recommend a couple meals in that window. So let's say from, 1 to 5, you're eating. So have a meal at 1, maybe a snack at 3, and then have your last meal at 5, if that is acceptable. You can do maybe 50 grams per meal and get a 30-gram snack in there.
So as far as your experience as a registered dietitian, how do you feel personally? Because I like to tell my clients, if we can get your protein from natural food sources, that's where I want it coming from. But if I've got a client, 200 pounds, trying to hit that 150 to 160 gram of protein a day, they're hitting about 50, 60 grams a meal, chicken breast and everything, and they need that additional 30, 40 grams. What would you tell one of your patients if they were saying, hey, I want to start looking at protein shakes, or I want to start looking at protein bars? What's your opinion on those sort of supplements?
Okay, so from my experience, whey protein seems to be the best. If you are vegetarian or if you're vegan, there are some really great high quality plant based protein mixes out there, specifically pea protein as one of the ingredients. Typically, about 25 grams per shake is what you're looking for. Nothing more than 30, nothing less than 20. Um, and I think you want to do food first. You always want to do food first. But if you know you're not going to get it with food, that's when you add the protein supplement. A lot of people do add the protein supplement after a workout because that's when your muscles are really wanting that protein. Typically, I've heard anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes after a workout, but most likely 30 up to 30 minutes after workout is important. The supplement industry is, I want to say, at least a 300 million, if not a $1 billion industry, and you just want to be careful and you want to be smart about what you're doing. You can certainly work out and build muscle and lose weight without any supplements whatsoever, but if you want to have things like, if you want to have it a little quicker, if you want to reduce soreness, there's things that you could buy for that. So
Okay. So just kind of in summation here, what I think you and I are both agreeing on is intermittent fasting has its place. In my experience, I think if someone has has never dieted before, they don't have a healthy relationship with food, they eat every single time they're hungry. I think intermittent fasting could be a good tool to help them kind of build upon that. But I don't ever recommend it as a long term thing. But the thing I think that you and I are agreeing on is as far as protein synthesis, as far as long-term sustainability and building muscle, the spread out in a day protein intake is going to be more beneficial than trying to get 100 to 160 grams of protein all in one meal. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I think spreading your meals out, even if it's just 4 hours, I think is a really good thing. Just remember eating, on a cleaner basis. Try to limit your processed food. I think planning is a big key when eating healthy. When you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to build muscle, you've got to clean up your diet. There's no way around that. And yes, there's quick fixes for that, but you don't want to rely on those.
Right. Awesome. All right. Well, Rich, I appreciate you getting on here with us today and kind of going over some of this stuff. I know a lot of my clients have been asking about the intermittent fasting, and it's good to be able to have colleagues who can offer this sort of insight that it's kind of out of my scope. So I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you,
And
man.
yeah, so next time, don't really have time to go into it today, but I got a lot of clients also looking at the keto diet as well. So in the near future, maybe that's another one we could kind of jump on and go over.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.